Hi amiguitos. Alright, in this video I will be answering another popular question regarding traveling abroad and living abroad, especially living in Mexico, and that is about dating. So this video will focus on dating in Merida, Mexico, because well, Mexico, it is such a big country, so I can only speak about where I am currently living. Alright, so dating in Merida, Yucatan, Mexico. How was it like for single women? Because we all know that reality is different for male and for female. Now, let's get right into it. For me, my experience will be a little bit different because I'm not only gonna be talking about dating as a solo female living here in Merida. I will also be talking about dating from a black woman's perspective. All right, so right now I have been living here in Merida for 3 years and 6 months now, and that is about 42 months. Yeah, 3 years and 6 months continuously, all in one go. And I have dabbled a little bit, so that's the best way to describe it. Dabble. I have dabbled a little bit into the world of dating here, either online or offline. But in the past year and a half, I haven't really been doing much. However, in I believe 2021 and some parts of 2022, and also a little bit of last year, 2023, I did dabble a little bit in the world of dating here in Merida. Now, dating in Merida, it's unique because Merida, or Yucatan in general, it is such a unique state, and it has its own culture. It's very different from the rest of Mexico, so experiences here will be different. The culture here is different. Many people describe the culture here as being secluded, meaning that the local people here usually hang with themselves and themselves only, even though that's not always true. I do know of a few people from here who were born and raised here who are dating outside of their culture. So there's always going to be an exception for everybody, for every group. Now, I have a few girlfriends. We're all from all over, including even Mexicans, but they are from different parts of Mexico. And I will actually have to say that pretty much since I've known them over a year, maybe 2 years now, they've been largely they've been single for the most part. I think maybe 2 of them that are really close to me, they've also gone out with some men from here and also from Mexico and also from outside of Mexico. One thing that I wanted to point out is that for a female, right, we have a really long list when it comes to what we're looking for. And sometimes when you're living outside of your culture, outside of what you're used to, then things can get a little bit complicated and you might have to readjust in terms of what you are looking for, especially when it comes to finances. So let's say back home in your country, your requirements for a man might be to make, I mean, right now 6 figures seems to be very popular, even though only just a small percentage of people actually make that much. Now you might, let's say your annual salary is about $50,000 per year, let's say US dollars. Your requirements might be for a man to make maybe $50,000 and above or thereabouts. But when you come here to Mexico, then the financial requirements will have to be much lower. It might even have to be half of that, so like 25K and above. And so when you're living in a culture with such a strong machismo culture, then things will be very different. And that's when you have to find somebody who is, let's say, from the country you're in, for example here in Merida, who doesn't mind a woman who makes significantly more than him, who is more confident in herself and just different from the local culture. Now here in Merida, from what I've been hearing, also what I've experienced, because I don't like to generalize things. Just because something is my experience doesn't mean it's somebody else's experience and it's everybody's experience. But what I've been hearing from the streets is that from the male's perspective, they're very traditional, meaning they're looking for traditional women. And for the woman's perspective, they are saying that the men are machistas, so with a strong machismo culture. And they also accuse the men of cheating a lot. And I've actually experienced, or I've had a few girlfriends tell me that while on dating sites, they've had married men, like full-blown married men send them messages, or they've had married men approach them out and about. So that might be something to take into account. That's just a small percentage. Not all of the men cheat and they are traditional, and not all the female. Another aspect that I hear from the men is that the women can be quite possessive and jealous, and yeah, so I don't know. It's mostly because I hang out with a lot of people who aren't from here, so that is their perspective. So one thing that I've been gathering though is that for the most part, the Yucatecos and Yucatecas, it's better if they just date themselves, because it's like they understand each other, they know how to manage each other. While people who aren't from here, so it could be a Mexican national who moved to Merida, usually they would look for somebody who is also a foreigner just like them, or somebody who moved from outside of Mexico to Mexico. So what has been my experience? Like I said, I haven't actually gone into the whole dating world fully. I've just sort of like dipped my feet into the water a little bit and just dabbled a little bit, but I've tried both online and offline. So I've tried dating apps, and there was a time I was actually quite consistent with it, but then again my demise was that I didn't take it seriously. So for me personally, I don't use my phone as much. Sometimes I'll get messages and I don't read those messages for days, or if it's a personal message or it's a friend or a relative messaging me, then obviously I respond ASAP. But aside from that, I just feel like technology sometimes gives a lot of anxiety, so I try not to use them as much, and also they affect my eyesight, so I stay away from them. Now if I'm talking to somebody that I've never met online, a stranger I haven't met online, usually I don't prioritize those. And one thing I've found here, and I've actually used dating apps in many parts of the world, many countries, and I find that men are all the same. And this is what I usually tell my girlfriends who are like, well, I'm Mexican, but I want someone who isn't from Mexico. I want an American, I want an European, I want this, I want that. I'm just like, we're all the same. Men are the same everywhere, women are the same everywhere. We all want the same things. Men all over the world want the same things, women all over the world, they want the same things. It might be in different formats, right? They might want to be loved in different ways, but still we all want the same thing. So one thing I found out, at least about men here, is that some of them are just looking for somebody to talk to. So like online companionship, meaning that they just keep talking to you for days on end, weeks on end, and nothing ever happens. And if you do invite them out, or maybe they even invite you out, one thing that I've experienced is that they cancel at the very last minute, or they don't show up. And I've actually had maybe a few of my girlfriends tell me the same thing as well. Like, hey, like they usually follow up with the guy, or they wait for him to follow up, and then nothing happens, he never follows up, and they don't hear from him, or at the very last minute he makes something up, something comes up for him and it doesn't show up. So that's one thing that that at least I've been experiencing here. So maybe those men are in a relationship, and so they're just looking for somebody online just to talk to and just to keep them company. But one thing that at least is not an issue here is that a lot of people here, a lot of Mexicans, they speak English, so language isn't a barrier. Even though sometimes for me I just communicate in Spanish, sometimes I might use the translator app to just translate a few words to make sure that it sounds grammatically correct, but for the most part I can usually understand the conversation. So language isn't a barrier for me, but many people on the apps, they speak English quite fluently. Now, speaking of English, I've also met maybe a few men who are looking for language exchange buddies, language exchange partners on there. So people use these apps for many different reasons: online companionships, language exchange, stuff like that. But dating online, at least in Merida, it's safe, because I've never had any man ask me for money or make up something, or just, and when I do go out to meet those men publicly, even though I can actually count the number of guys that I have met in person off of dating apps, I've never felt uncomfortable, I've never felt unsafe, I've never felt like something was about to go down. So dating online here in Merida, completely safe. Well, at least that has been my own experience. I choose to meet them out in a public space, usually close to me. Well, fortunately for me, I live close to Centro, so very easy to just get around and to meet up. All right, so another thing for me, another challenge that I have with dating apps was that, because I no longer use dating apps, for the most part, the conversations are usually the same and it's dry, meaning that well, because they can obviously see me, they're like, okay, where are you from, how long have you been living here? So I always felt like I was being interviewed all the time, and that's my challenge actually living in Mexico. It's not even just about dating apps. My first time here, 2018, it was always the same question I get asked every single day. Some people would just ask you, where are you from, without even saying hi, hello, how are you, just like, where are you from? I was like, okay. So yeah, because they're just curious. But I mean, like, it gets tiring when you are on the receiving end, because you're getting asked the same questions all the time. Anytime you meet somebody new, where are you from, how long have you been here? Sometimes I'll joke around. I'll be like, I'm from Chiapas, I'm from Tabasco, I'm from these places. I just joke around, and then I let them guess. It depends on my mood, or some days I just answer them, because I do understand that they are curious. A majority of them they've never met any Africans, or they've never met somebody from Nigeria. So to me, it's also an opportunity to educate them. But one thing I found about dating apps, at least, is that I felt like I was always being interviewed. And there was a time actually I had to put an FAQ section on my profile, like, okay, this is where I'm from, I live here, I'm not a tourist, this is how long I've been living here. And because it was always the same questions, and still, well, most people, they don't read bios, especially men, they don't read bios. They're just swiping right on everybody because it's a numbers game. So men will still ask me the same question. So again, depending on my mood, I'll be like, hey, I've already answered those questions in my bio, and then the conversation ends, and there it is. Or sometimes if I'm actually in the mood, then I'll be like, hey, okay, I'm from here. Oh, by the way, I also answered other questions on the app, and again, the conversation just ends. So for the most part, at least the dating apps for me were just like, it was a time wasting activity for me, especially for somebody who really uses her phone. So it's like I had to be on the phone more often than I was supposed to. So after maybe a couple years or so of trying the dating app here in Merida, I just had to leave it. Even though I know, maybe at least I know of a friend who met her partner on one of the major apps, and I also know of a few friends here who also met their boyfriends. I don't know if it's on the app or offline, but they are dating local Mexican men, but definitely not from Yucatan. Not from Yucatan, so they're from like somewhere else in Mexico. All right, so that's it pretty much for apps. Now, dating apps, do they work in Merida? In Mexico, they do work, because in Mexico City, yeah, I had, good prospects in Mexico City, but obviously I don't live in Mexico City, and I'm not interested in like long distance dating, so I just let that die off. But in Merida, I found, well, Merida doesn't really have as many people, so you're gonna get fewer matches, right? That's number one. And number two, depending on your ethnicity, yeah, and also depending on your age, depending on, I guess, your profile, stuff like that, you might get fewer matches, and the matches that you get might be lower quality, but it's all a numbers game, right? So you might have to swipe for a few days, a few weeks to get the match you're looking for. About 2 years ago, I met a girl. She's, I think, African American, yeah, and she was on the dating apps every single day, and like I think she was going on dates maybe 3-4 times a week. Like, she made it like a part-time hobby. And she was on the apps a lot, going on dates a few times a week. And I think after 2 weeks, she found somebody, right? Because she was really dedicated to it, and she found somebody. And I'm like, whoa, I've been on this app like way longer than you here in Merida, and I'm still here. But again, it depends on what you're looking for, really, and it depends on your need. For me, it's more of like a nice to have a nice to have aspect. And also, like I said, it's just, yeah. So that's it for dating apps, at least my own personal experience when it comes to the app. Okay, now meeting men offline. So about a year ago also, I started hosting singles events. This year I haven't really done much because I've been occupied with a few other things. So I started organizing in-person events for singles who are more comfortable meeting in person and not online, right? Because a lot of people have very bad experiences online. Even though dating apps work, but they only work for a small percentage. The majority of the users are not finding luck with it. So I started hosting in-person singles events for singles to get together and mingle. Even though there are other social activities, social gatherings that people can just meet organically. But then I also found that some people actually are looking for an event that is geared towards single. So like something with a focus. Because then if you are nervous about approaching people, or you feel like, okay, you don't want to embarrass yourself, you don't want to harass somebody, then you know that everybody there is single, well, at least they are supposed to be single, and they are looking to be paired up. video. Yeah, I've only organized about 3 singles events, so I don't have enough data to present and be like, okay, this worked and this doesn't work. Even though one of my singles events, so I did have, or I'll say maybe a potential match, but nothing really happened there. It was just, you know, talking and then it fizzled up. And then another offline potentials that I've got, actually now that I'm doing this video, I'm like, whoa, I've actually received quite a few potentials. But anyway, so the men that I met offline, yeah, I met them through just going out to like organic, just regular events. There's another conversation group that I go to on Mondays, so I think I met one guy there and then maybe 2 other guys from my conversation meeting. And yeah, so again, those ones also fizzled off, mainly because of like age gap, like I'm older or like they're much older, just stuff like that. Because again, remember, like I said, for me, dating at this point, it's like a nice to have aspect. So it's not something that I'm like, oh my gosh, by the next 2 weeks I must be in one. So yeah, so that's pretty much the offline experiences that I've had. Now this year, at least in the past maybe 2 months or so, I've been experimenting with a few things, which is walking up to a man and just engaging in conversation and now getting their contact. Because then I feel like, okay, it puts me in control, and also it's just me practicing different things and just working on a few things on myself. And yeah, so I'm still in the testing phase for that one, so I don't have enough data right now to be like, okay, I tried this for this long and these are my results, right? So in terms of me going up to guys and just getting a guy's Instagram or contact, I'm still in the testing phase. I think I've only got to maybe 1 so far, and I've also given out my numbers out to men, both from here, like I think just a few days ago I exchanged contact with a guy, but again yeah, because I think so another thing with Merida is that it's a tourist city, so you're gonna have a lot of people coming into Merida for business or for leisure. So you meet someone, they're like, hey, I just come to Merida for this and I'm gone tomorrow, I'm gone next week. I'm like, okay, all right. And for me at this stage in my life, I don't have the energy for casual, short-term, what have you, anything casual, short-term, because I feel like it drains my energy. And right now I have too many things I'm working on that I need my energy for, both physical energy and emotional energy. So I need to conserve my energy for things that are more important to me. So that's another thing about dating in Merida. For me, I live close to Central, so even when I'm on the apps, I'm getting a lot of people who don't even live in Merida, because some of these apps will tell you where those people are from or where they live, because you can usually put where you live. And I'm scrolling down to their profile and I'm like, okay, this person lives in a different state, in a different city, in a different that, and usually they're just here for a short while. So because I live close to Central, I get a lot of tourists popping up on my dating app, on my feed. So I think in the past what I've done was that I would, like, if I go really far away from Central, let's say I go to the north, then I might go on my app, then I might swipe a little bit, because then I'm more likely to get someone who actually live here and they aren't technically from Yucatan, because when you go up north, you're gonna get a lot of Mexican immigrants who immigrated from other parts of Mexico to Yucatan or to Merida, and then they usually live in certain parts of the city, mostly in the north. So that's another thing as well. Also, I go dancing, salsa dancing, and I don't think I've got, maybe just one guy, I don't think I've gotten a suitor from salsa dancing, or maybe I have 1 or 2, but again, like I said, I just, that probably fizzled off. Yeah, so, and then I have friends ask me, okay, so what are you looking for? I'm like, well, I know what I'm looking for. When I see what I'm looking for, then I know. A final question I'm gonna answer is that how is it like dating Mexican men? So I think I touched upon this briefly earlier on, which is that it's the same like dating any other man from anywhere. And it's the same, because people think, oh, okay, so how is it like, have you dated men from here? Have you dated? So I've dated 2 men from Merida, and it was okay. I mean, it wasn't anything exciting. Actually, I was quite like, there was like nothing special, nothing exciting happened. And I would have to say that when the conversation, when it fizzled out, I was quite relieved, because I felt like at one point, like, it was draining my energy a little bit. There was also this other guy from, I think, north of Mexico also, that I was also talking to at one point, and again that stopped. But I think these men, so all 3 of them, they actually speak English quite well, and I think they are exposed. I think maybe 2 of them have actually been outside of Mexico, so it's not the usual telenovela romance you would get, right, where the man is so madly in love and like they fall in love so quickly and and stuff like that. Nope, with this man it was just regular. Now I don't know, maybe if they were dating other Mexican women it'll be different, like there will be different men, but at least for me it just felt normal, nothing special. It wasn't like, you know, I felt like a queen or I felt like whatever. It was just regular, like, oh hi, how are you, stuff like that. Nothing extraordinary, right? Just regular. All right, so but again, that has been my own personal experience. And maybe a final question on my answer is that, are there black men in Merida, and can I date black men in Merida? Yeah, there are single black men in Merida. It depends on where. Also, it's like single black men, but where are they from? So we have a lot of Cubans here in Merida, and yeah, a lot of Cubans. And in terms of African Americans, single men, not so many. At least I don't encounter them as often. There are a lot more single African American women than men, because even though I don't go out to the event as much, but when I look at pictures, it's usually a lot of female, at least around my age bracket. And the men, the single men, are much older, like they're like retired. So it depends on what you're looking for. But here in Merida, in terms of the African American community, people usually move down here with their whole family. So with the wife, the kids, sometimes with their parents, right? So there aren't that many black men. So if you're moving down here looking to date another African American or even African men, you're gonna have to open up your dating pool or just be okay dating long distance. If you want to date locally, like you want to be able to go out, hang out, and just chill and such, then you're gonna have to just go after what's readily available, what's easily available, which will be obviously the locals. And like I mentioned earlier, the locals here from Yucatan, it's quite unique. It's a unique experience dating them, and it's better that they date each other for the most part, because just the culture, for me, I understand the culture perfectly well, right? But they just assume you're a foreigner, so you never understand anything. But anyway, so your best bet would be to go after Mexican men who are from outside of Yucatan, right? Because then they're a little bit more exposed. They are looking to just sometimes even date outside of their own country, outside of their own race. So that might be the best bet for you. All right, so I think that is it for my experience about dating in Mexico, especially actually dating in Merida, because dating somewhere else in Mexico, different, right? Like I have a friend who went to Guadalajara and she was like, whoa, it was so nice. Like I had men asking me out all the time. And I also have another friend, she's also black, British. She was in Mexico City. She was like, oh, guys were asking her out on dates all the time. So it depends on where you're at. It depends on your location, right? Now I've had people ask me, you know, would I move for love? Will I move? Yeah, the answer is yes, because I usually don't stay in one place for too long anyway. So yeah, but not okay, I meet someone and then I'll actually move to that person's country, maybe to go visit. Yeah, but in terms of opening up my pool, I think for me it's better for me to live outside of Merida to be able to get the kinds of men that at least I'm actually interested in. But yeah, that has been my experiences, at least in the past 3 years or so, living here in Merida as a single female. Now there are so many options, right? But just me. It's a me problem. It's not the location problem, or it might be the location problem, I don't know, but I think yeah, it's mostly a me problem. But I guess, you know, when it's time, then it's time for me. But so for those living here in Merida, let me know what your experiences has been, or if you've lived anywhere else abroad, let me know what your experiences were like or what they are currently like when it comes to dating men, because this is from a female perspective, because the men always have choices, because usually the men are mostly looking for a physically attractive woman. That's it, right? And for the woman, you know, it's like, okay, so he's foreigner, he makes more money, he speaks English, he takes me out to fancy places. If stuff works out for the both of us, we can get married and then I can move to his country, who are hoping to move. But as a female, you move to a different country, then things can get a little bit tricky, right? So that means for you as a female, you might need to change your preferences. You might need to attract men who aren't looking for the traditional aspect, meaning that they has to make less, she has to has less confidence, she has to speak less, in like all these things, right, that your ancestors have left in the past, like several generations ago. Right now you're having to deal with that now, right? So it's like going back in time. And so for a lot of women who move to countries like Mexico, it's a little bit hard for them to go back in time. So it's like the men have to catch up with them. But yeah, but there are progressive men who see women, you know, as equals, and so it's just a matter of finding those men, because
they are the exception, right? All right, so that has been my experience so far living in Merida when it comes to dating Mexican men, or I guess dating Yucatecan men here in Merida. And let me know if you have any other tips for me. I guess let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.